This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
You are live in the CNN newsroom. I'm Jim Acosta in Washington, and this just in, Vice President Kamala Harris has called for an assault weapons ban in the wake of back-to-back mass shootings. Take a listen.
On the issue of gun violence, I will say, as I've said countless times, we are not sitting around waiting to figure out what the solution looks like. You know, we're not looking for a vaccine. We know what works on this. It includes, let's have an assault weapons ban.
The Vice President made the remarks before attending the funeral for one of the mass shooting victims in Buffalo, just a day before President Biden travels to Texas to mourn the lives of 19 children and 2 teachers in Uvalde, Texas. There is growing outrage in that Texas town about the police response to the shooting at the elementary school. Police now admitting the on-scene police commander at Robb Elementary School chose to wait to confront the gunman who slaughtered innocent children and 2 teachers, a devastating explanation that shatters the initial police narrative of a quick response.
I was misled. I am livid about what happened. There are people who deserve answers the most, and those are the families whose lives have been destroyed. They need answers that are accurate. And it is inexcusable that they may have suffered from any inaccurate information whatsoever.
For about 80 minutes, students and teachers in 2 classrooms sat helpless as the gunman sprayed bullets, telling them it's time to die while sadistically playing music. Authorities say the school district police chief somehow believed the active shooting situation was over. This despite the ongoing 911 calls from young children, some covered in the blood of their friends, begging to send the police now. But the entire time police were there. At one point, up to 19 officers were in a hallway just feet away from the gunman, and more law enforcement waited outside. Instead of confronting the gunman, some were busy fending off parents who pleaded with them to stop the shooter. The children who did survive say the wait for a long rescue felt like a long, excruciating exercise. Finally, an elite Border Patrol team breached the door to the classroom where the gunman was barricaded, but the gunman was waiting for them. He emerged from a closet and began shooting before the agents killed him. Today, sadly, would have been the first weekend of summer for the 19 children killed and 2 teachers who were also killed in that attack. Instead, their families are planning their funerals. Let's go now live to CNN's Adrian Broadus in Uvalde, Texas. Adrian, authorities say the gunman decision not to storm the gunman was wrong. What are you hearing from the parents?
We're hearing rage, Jim, in their voice, and we see the pain on their face. Here in Uvalde, rage and grief coexist. But who do you hold responsible? Is it a member of law enforcement? I mean, these parents are saying the shooter is dead. You can't send him to prison. They know the shooter is responsible for what happened inside of the school, but they want someone to be held accountable. We spoke to parents whose children are among the 19 children who were killed, expressed frustration about the response time, as well as anger over the decision made by the person who was in charge of this scene that day to hold his officers back. Then parents are asking more questions, some of the same questions we've asked. Where was the school resource officer? Why wasn't that person on campus? We learned from authorities yesterday that the resource officer heard what was happening over the radio, drove back here to the school, but drove past the shooter. Nearly an hour, really more than an hour passed between the time the first 911 call was made by that panicked teacher inside and when the shooter was killed. Listen to some of the rage from these parents.
They were not concerned about the real trauma that was happening inside. Honestly, I think they did. They waited too long, because I was out here I was out here, and I mean, I'm not the only parent that witnessed it. It's sad that a lot of parents witnessed it, and then to see that they're saying that it was, you know, they got in here quick and handled business. That's not, that is not the way that happened.
Had they gotten there sooner and somebody would have taken immediate action, we might have more of those children here today, including my daughter.
And that last person you heard from was Mr. Garza. His daughter called 911, he believes, on the cell phone she got 2 weeks ago for her 10th birthday. You know, these parents are wondering, what if? You can't go back in time, but moving forward, they're trying to process not only what happened, but how do they prevent this from happening from other communities? Jim?
And Adrian, what comes next in the investigation?
Pardon me, Jim. It's loud here. Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, no, just wondering what comes next in the investigation.
Well, yesterday we heard Governor Abbott say he was livid, said he was upset. And members of law enforcement plan to investigate this, but who will be held responsible? We know President Biden will travel here tomorrow to meet with family members, and he's also planning to meet with community leaders, most likely members of law enforcement. And I can't help but to underscore, when the president meets with the families who were left behind, he will tell them he understands what they're going through. It's something he too has been through. Jim?
Adrian Broadus, thank you very much. Joining me now, CNN law enforcement analyst and former acting Baltimore Police Commissioner Anthony Barksdale and journalist Dave Cullen. He's the author of 2 books on school shootings, Columbine and Parkland, Birth of a Movement. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate it. Anthony, let me go to you first. The commander on the scene, I guess this is what we've learned in the last 24 hours, decided this was no longer an active shooter situation, despite the gunman being inside the room and despite these children still calling 911 over the sounds of gunfire. All of this is contrary to the guidance posted on a Texas government website about how to respond to active shooters. We've heard from law enforcement experts over and over again, the officer's first priority is to move in and confront the attacker. Here it is right here in this law enforcement guide. The best hope that innocent victims have is that officers immediately move into action to isolate, distract, or neutralize the threat, even if that means one officer acting alone. How do you square that with what happened?
Jim, it can't be squared. This was failure at the highest level. To say we're going to a hostage barricade situation when clearly it was still an active shooter situation. There's no way to justify this. You train over and over again until your hands are tired from practicing, until your arm is tired from carrying a body bunker to pretend that someone is shooting at you. There is no excuse here. It's that chief should have been relieved or ignored immediately by those on the scene. He didn't know what he was doing. He made a bad call, so you still push. Let him charge you later. Let him file charges against you later, but you get in there for those kids. He must be held accountable.
Yeah,
No,
Dave.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. Dave, what do you think?
Same. I mean, God, it's just, you know, taking a horrible situation and making it worse, and worse for the families. I think of Dave Sanders' family, who was the teacher who bled to death for 3 hours at Columbine, and it took a long time for his family to get over it because that didn't have to happen. And that's actually why the active shooter protocol came into effect, because of him and the other people at Columbine. They rethought this. And yeah, we'd hoped we'd been past it. I was just relieved yesterday that the law enforcement on this finally came clean, stopped covering up and lying about it. The governor said they lied to him, so they stopped that and they stopped the bleeding. they stopped making it worse, stopped rubbing salt into the wounds. The one thing that irritated me yesterday about the press conference, I really appreciated the guy in charge saying that clearly mistakes were made, but he kept saying, you know, in hindsight, mistakes. I'm like, looking at, I don't see how in the present, like, you know, looking at just, you know, I don't know what we could see that, you know, that wasn't a mistake. It's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, Anthony, I mean, I keep coming back to the same thing, whether it's an active shooter, whether it's you know, somebody who's barricaded himself and all of the victims have died and that can somehow be confirmed. I mean, I suppose if there's nobody left alive, you would potentially wait, but I don't understand why they don't just charge in with the thought that even if one person is alive.
Jim, you're right. What if somebody, one of those little kids was still alive and you could get them up out of there, pick them up, get out my way, I got to get them to the ambo. Let's go, let's move. Maybe even just one. They didn't do that.
Yeah, at Columbine, Patrick Ireland was unconscious till like 2 o'clock or something for a couple hours laying there. The killers actually committed suicide at the table right beside him, unaware that his lifeless body was still alive. He lived, went out the window finally later. He's very famous, graduated valedictorian. And I'm sure in all these, you know, yeah, obviously, police know that. Obviously, you know, usually they're almost always surviving people. It's almost unheard of that everyone is dead. So, I mean, that's not even really a realistic. But, you know, I hope we can move on because clearly this guy has to be counted. He made a huge mistake. You know, thank you for your other, because I hadn't even thought about, you know, overruling them. I don't know what it's like to be a cop. I'm like, that sounds right, though, too. You probably should have just like, look, I'll take the hit. I'm going to save these kids. And if you want to like
That's right.
sue me or do something like career, you know, just like deal, because I'm going to save these kids.
That's right. Charge me, suspend me. I'm going in for those kids. Whoever
Right.
Yeah.
the members
The
on that
parents had to be
tag team
restrained.
went
They
in.
wanted to run in.
Good. That's what we're supposed to do, Jim.
Yeah.
That's our job. That's what we swore to do. Good for them.
Yeah. And Dave, you speak a lot with former Arizona Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, herself a survivor of a mass shooting. I remember when that happened. I mean, that was devastating, what happened to her and in that supermarket that day. What does she have to say about this latest shooting and whether there's any, I guess, reason to hope that this will finally be the one that brings about change?
Yeah, well, she has a lot of hope, not necessarily for the immediate future. And I think she, and I also talked to Shannon Watts yesterday from Moms Demand Action, they don't see like any one thing solving it or any one event, but making, you know, incremental changes. And people don't realize that behind the scenes, like the world has dramatically changed since Sandy Hook. Both the main organizations we have now, Giffords Courage and Everytown, which includes moms, came into existence because of Sandy Hook. They're now beating the NRA on most of the state battles, where most of the battles have been fought. The NRA is badly weakened. There's now a team in the field. Democrats, a lot of them are finally running on this. So a lot has changed, but it's going to take a lot of different changes, not just one thing, and it won't just be like one event. The other, you know, I contacted Gabby Tuesday night because she's the smartest person I see on this and wanted to talk. Because she has aphasia, a bullet through the head, she still cannot speak clearly like you or me. So we went back and forth for email for 3 days. But she's so smart, and partly because most people don't realize about this, she's not just from Tucson. She grew up on a ranch as a little cowgirl. I call her Gabby Oakley. There's all these pictures like she's on a horseback with gun in hand. She is a real cowgirl. She gets these people. She was shot with a Glock. She still has one in her house. Yeah. Because she already owned a Glock, because she likes them, and so she gets these people. And for her, it's about meeting in the middle on gun safety, not this horrible idea of gun control, but finding common ground, because most gun owners actually want some changes. They just don't trust liberals to do it. So that's the hard part.
Yeah, and Anthony, Vice President Harris was just commenting on this, and she said essentially that it's time to bring back the assault weapons ban that you had in the mid-1990s. It expired in the mid-2000s. What do you think? Would that help cops? In many cases, they're outgunned.
Yeah, absolutely, it would. I mean, look, I support the Second Amendment. I get all of that. But we are seeing incidents where officers are not only outgunned, but the suspects are showing up now set to defeat regular service weapon ammo. They're able to defeat a 40 caliber 9mm 45 ammo coming out of a Glock or some other type of firearm. So yeah, I'm for it now. And at bare minimum, at least keep these assault rifles. If you can't get that passed because the Republicans don't want to budge, if you can't do that, can we at least move the minimum age up? It's clear some of these kids should not, yeah, I'm calling 18-year-olds kids. They should not have such lethal weapons in their hands. They just shouldn't. And if I could piggyback what my fellow guest said, the police coming clean, that's horrible that they have to come clean. If people like Shimon weren't pushing them and challenging them on what was being reported, would they have come clean? I don't know. I really, yeah, I do know. I don't think so. We wouldn't have got the facts. So it's crucial that the media keeps pressing, not on this incident alone, but every type of incident like this, because sometimes it's not all at the bottom where the fault is. These officers do as told, where the order's coming from, and hold these executives accountable for what occurs.
All right. Well, I think well said all around. Anthony Barksdale, Dave Cullen, thank you very much. Dave Cullen, we should also mention the author of 2 books on school shootings, Columbine and Parkland, Birth of a Movement. Great stuff. Dave and Anthony, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Coming up, large protests outside the NRA's annual convention, while inside, former President Trump calls to arm more Americans.
The existence of evil is one of the very best reasons to arm law-abiding citizens.
Plus, with gas prices soaring, millions of Americans are traveling and making preparations to shell out big bucks for the Memorial Day weekend.
We'll be landing shortly in South Africa.
Sunny day in Cape Town and today
We invite you with open arms to our wonderful country.
My name is Øystein Jensen. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at Odfjell SE. It is important that shipping becomes sustainable. It is important that shipping moves towards zero because we are a part of the global value chain. We represent 2.8% of the total emission, and that emissions will still grow as the shipping industry will grow because the global demand for transportation is growing. And so the only solution is actually to go zero. Thank you to Sustainability Live. Being an event like this, I believe that is important because it gives you the wider understanding of the challenge. It gives us insight to areas that we haven't thought about, because this challenge is nothing one company can solve by themselves. So that's why we need to collaborate, and we need to collaborate across the industry.
Just a 4-hour drive from Uvalde, protesters are calling out the NRA as thousands of gun enthusiasts gather in Houston for their annual meeting. Some of the demonstrators are holding up photos of the Uvalde massacre victims and carrying caskets. CNN's Camila Bernal joins me now from Houston. Camila, many high-profile Republicans have been speaking at the convention, as you know, including former President Donald Trump, a speech that included moments like this.
The terrible murder of 19 innocent children and 2 adult teachers, with many badly injured, was a savage and barbaric atrocity that shocks the conscience of every single American.
But then his speech ended this way. Not sure what they're celebrating there in Houston, Camila, but what else did the former president have to say and others have to say at this convention?
Well, look, I think in the beginning, the president wanted to make it very clear that he was not like the other Republicans who didn't show up. He said he wasn't here to disappoint his supporters. He, of course, rejected efforts to overhaul gun laws in this country and then went on to essentially copy that Republican message that says that you need to focus on schools. So the former president saying that you need to have just one entryway at schools, and at that entrance have an armed security guard or just any sort of police officer at the entrance. He also said that there are some teachers that need to be armed. He copied the exact same line from Senator Ted Cruz, who spoke earlier, saying that the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is with a good guy with a gun. Listen to part of his message yesterday.
The existence of evil in our world is not a reason to disarm law-abiding citizens who know how to use their weapon and can protect a lot of people. The existence of evil is one of the very best reasons to arm law-abiding citizens. Sadly, before the sun had even set on the horrible day of tragedy, we witnessed a now familiar parade of cynical politicians seeking to exploit the tears of sobbing families to increase their own power and take away our constitutional rights.
Now, of course, there are a lot of people who reject that message, who say that more needs to be done. There were hundreds and hundreds out here yesterday demanding change. There's a significant group here today, a lot smaller, but still just as passionate, saying that they need to be listened to, that this is enough. They do not want to see another person killed by gun violence. You're hearing the chants now. They're saying, vote them out. There is a huge focus on voting and what can be done, not just out here in the streets, but later on in November. They're telling people to get involved, to reach out to their senators, to their representatives, because that's the only way that they believe they will get change. Jim?
All right, Camila Bernal, thank you very much. Coming up, Republican Senator Ted Cruz storms away when asked about America's mass shooting problem. Hold on for that.
Why is America the only country that faces this kind of mass shooting?
But you can't answer that. You can't answer that, can you say?
I'm Delia Gallagher in Rome, and this is CNN.
We try to be global and we try to be smart. What I want to hear are authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent, and that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria, GPS, Sundays on CNN.
The labor market in the U.S. is very strong. It's had its fastest growing labor market in over 40 years, and you can see that come through through very strong nominal wage inflation as well here in the US, but the same is true across Europe as well and in many other parts of the world. And this is still a labor market that is experiencing the effects of the pandemic, where labor supply was constrained due to health care issues, lockdown issues, and is still trying to come back. But most labor markets today are stronger today than they were before the pandemic.
Have you been bitten by the bug of curiosity? This is CNN 10. My name is Carl Azus. I'll be your explainer-in-chief.
Global news.
International relations are the key factors.
Relevant stories.
Everyday people whose action is changing their community.
Complex issues explained.
We're going back to the future.
And 10-second trivia.
You get a perfect 10 out of 10.
All in 10 minutes. Stream at cnn.com/CNN10.
I would describe One World as compelling, inclusive, and original.
One World with Zain Asher, weeknights on CNN.
This is the Innovation Center, right?
Indeed,
Okay.
where the magic happens. So what you're going to be going through now is an experience zone built with the end user's journey in mind. So
Akshay Chopra heads the Innovation Center at Visa's newly opened regional headquarters in Dubai. I'm taking a seat. This is for me.
this is all yours.
Thank you very much. Overseeing 90 markets from Europe to Asia.
You can take any surface like a bus stop, a metro station, turn it into a well-stocked retail store.
And let's just say, it's pretty cool, turning everyday bores and chores into a digital delight. This is actually a really good first take, don't you think? Add to cart.
We want to make it easier for people to pay, get paid. We work with governments, with fintechs, with banks, with merchants of all shapes and sizes to help build payment experiences that are more convenient, more seamless, and more secure.
In a region where cash is king, Akshay says the global pandemic accelerated the move to digital.
I'm Jim Bitterman in Paris, and this is CNN.
After the latest mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas, opponents of new gun safety laws in the U.S. are tap dancing around a key question that keeps coming up. Why does this only happen repeatedly here in America? Here's Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz speaking with Sky News.
Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism so awful?
You know, I'm sorry you think American exceptionalism is awful.
I think this aspect of it.
You got your political agenda.
No, it's honestly,
God love you.
Senator, it's not. I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
Well, it is just an American problem, sir.
Cruz and many other gun control opponents have their familiar talking points, from arming more staffers in schools to forcing students to use just one door to enter and exit campus. But they are adamant no new restrictions on firearms.
Look, the killer entered here the same way the killer entered in Santa Fe, through a back door, an unlocked back door. I sat down at round tables with the families from Santa Fe. We talked about what we need to do to harden schools, including not having unlocked back doors, including not having unlocked doors to classroom, having one door that goes in and out of the school, having armed police officers at that one door.
The truth of the matter is these people are going to commit these horrifying crimes, whether they have to use another weapon to do it with. They're going to figure out a way to do it.
I can't assure the American people there's any law we can pass to stop this shooting.
A person who is intent on committing violence is very hard to stop under any circumstances. An act of Congress isn't going to do it. Neither will gun control. There are more guns in this country than there are people. There always have been. However you feel about that fact, you can acknowledge that we will never get rid of all of those guns. The Constitution prohibits that, and you would set off a civil war if you tried to do it.
Leave it to Tucker Carlson to raise the prospect of civil war after a mass shooting. But the pro-gun talking points have been falling flat this week. To be clear, a war is already being waged against this nation's school children, who now live under a climate of fear doing mass shooter drills in their classrooms. And of course, in many parts of the U.S., you only have to be 18 years old to purchase a weapon of war, an assault-style rifle like the AR-15, the weapon of choice for most mass shooters. Consider this list of recent shootings in the U.S. where AR-15 style weapons were used. Boulder, Colorado, 10 dead. Parkland, Florida, 17 dead. Las Vegas, 60 dead. Aurora, Colorado, 12 dead. Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut, 26 dead. San Bernardino, California, 14 dead. Midland, Odessa, 7 dead. Sutherland Springs, Texas, 26 dead. Tree of Life Synagogue in Pennsylvania, 11 dead. And don't forget Buffalo, just 2 weeks ago today. In some of those shootings, other weapons were used in addition to the AR-15, but it keeps coming back to that gun. And yet, at the National Rifle Association convention on Friday, a 4-hour drive from the Uvalde school massacre, we should note, we still heard another pro-gun talking point, that all that's needed is a good guy with a gun.
Ultimately, as we all know, what stops armed bad guys is armed good guys. We must not react to evil and tragedy by abandoning the Constitution or infringing on the rights of our law-abiding citizens.
Tell that to the people in Uvalde. The good guys with guns in Texas have already admitted they made the wrong decision in waiting outside a classroom door as the shooter killed children inside. A top Texas law enforcement official explained the officers on the scene were afraid they would be shot.
They do not know where the gunman is. They are hearing gunshots. They are receiving gunshots. At that point, if they proceeded any further, not knowing where this suspect was at, they could have been shot. They could have been killed. And at that point, that gunman would have the opportunity to kill other people inside that school.
They could have been shot. They could have been killed. Imagine how the kids felt. If the cops were afraid, justifiably so, how are we supposed to arm teachers? Yes, this is a uniquely American phenomenon. According to the New York Times, from 1998 to 2019, the U.S. led, there it is right there, the developed world in the number of mass shootings. It's not even close. And the numbers here in the U.S. have only shot up over the last few years. The last time the U.S. enacted a major piece of gun legislation was 1994, when the assault weapons ban became a law before expiring 10 years later. Studies have shown mass shootings fell during this period and then rose again after the law expired. Studies have also indicated that the ban's restrictions on high-capacity magazines also had an impact because they reduced the number of victims shot in these massacres. Since then, Congress has been essentially paralyzed on this issue. Contrast that with other U.S. allies that have experienced mass shootings. They've done something about it, and it's worked. After a mass shooting in Australia in 1996, the government launched a gun buyback program and imposed tough new restrictions on gun ownership. That solved the problem in Australia. Britain, Canada, Norway, and New Zealand have all enacted sweeping new restrictions on firearms and have seen major declines in mass shootings. So to all the people who ask, what can we do? What can we do? There are things we can do. But there are powerful forces standing in the way of new laws on firearms, namely the nation's top gun lobby, the NRA. The NRA used to give money to both parties, but not anymore. Look at this graphic from Open Secrets, which tracks political contributions. In 2012, 89% of NRA contributions went to the GOP. In 2016, it was 99%. In 2020, it was 98%. This year so far, it's been 100%. Which brings us to the filibuster, which is not a law, just a tradition in the Senate. When Democrats control the House, they can pass gun control bills with a simple majority, but not in the Senate. You need 60 votes to overcome the filibuster and pass legislation in the Senate. The last time the Senate came close to approving a gun safety law was in 2013. That was after the massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary School, when the Senate failed to pass expanded background checks in what was known as the Manchin-Toomey Amendment. The vote was 54 to 46. 5 Democrats and 41 Republicans voted against the amendment. That was 9 years and too many mass shootings ago.
It came down to politics. The worry that that vocal minority of gun owners would come after them in future elections. So all in all, this was a pretty shameful day for Washington.
And it has remained shameful. Here in the U.S., opponents of new gun safety laws say the real issue is mental illness, as if the U.S. has a monopoly on mental illness. Of course, mental illness exists around the world. Only the U.S. has this problem with mass shootings. The National Alliance on Mental Illness told CNN this in 2019. If this were a mental health issue, and this was the only issue involved here, what you would see is roughly the same number of mass shootings around the world, and we're not seeing that. There's the old saying that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. In this country, you have to be 21 years old to buy a beer or a pack of cigarettes, but you only have to be 18 to buy an AR-15. Authorities in Texas say the 18-year-old shooter in Uvalde not only had an AR-15 style assault rifle with him, but also more than 1,600 rounds of ammo. He's 18. That's crazy. Just like the alcohol and tobacco industry, the gun makers do advertising too. Daniel Defense, the gun maker of the weapon used in the Uvalde mass shooting, posted this online ad in the days before that massacre. It shows a small child holding an AR-15 style rifle. The ad says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." It's a reference to a Bible proverb. Here's another one. We reap what we sow. And we'll be right back.
I believe we have an opportunity to move towards hope because we are learning more about this criminal enterprise. My name is Lisa C. Williams. I'm a philanthropist and an advocate for survivors of human trafficking. When I look back over 22 years of when I first started working in this space, I was simply trying to find safe shelter for girls who were 10 and 11 years old who were being bought and sold on our streets. One of the things that I remember very vividly, it was a turning point in our fight for Rachel's Law, is the CNN special, Children for Sale. It took something like that documentary that was hosted by Jada Pinkett Smith to wake up people and for them to want to look at it and understand what we were saying to them. And that just gave us momentum. And we took that film and we took it all over Georgia, and we galvanized people around a movement that we call the I Am Rachel movement to tell them about the safe harbor law that we were trying to get passed. And 83% of Georgians said, we agree that children are children and not the criminals.
Connect the World with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran. We are in Jerusalem.
Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the World with Becky Anderson, Monday through Friday on CNN.
Afghan women are afraid that this is the beginning of your efforts to erase them from the workspace.
Malumness, it's not clear. Even if we appear with the burqa, maybe they will say that women's voices are forbidden.
Did you ever imagine that you would be prevented from going to school?
Girls' education is fundamental to the dignity of Afghan life.
Do you believe that young girls will be allowed to go to school here in Afghanistan?
The holiday weekend is here, and millions of Americans are traveling to mark the unofficial start of summer. TSA agents screened 2.4 million passengers at airports across the country on Friday. That's 400,000 more passengers than on the same day last year. Many travelers are also expected to hit the road, and they'll be paying record high prices to fuel up. CNN's Nadia Romero joins me now from a gas station in Atlanta. Nadia, what are drivers telling you? I'm sure they're not happy.
Yeah, a lot of them are pretty frustrated from seeing those numbers go up and up. And today is the day, Jim, that we are seeing our highest recorded average price at $4.60 a gallon. That's the nationwide average for regular unleaded. And if you look at what that number was this time last year, we're paying $1.55 more per gallon this year compared to last year. Now, despite all of that, AAA is still expecting some 35 million Americans to hit the road to travel by car, and that's up 5% compared to last year. And we spoke with one woman who is a rideshare driver, and she says she notices if people are traveling, what the gas prices might be in her area, and she says it's affecting the industry. Take a listen.
Some Uber drivers that want to give up because of the gas prices, and that's probably because they don't go out that much. But me, myself, I go all over. I've been to Tennessee, Alabama, all north, south, east, west, Georgia, Florida. So it doesn't bother me as far as the gas prices are concerned. But I have seen how they've fluctuated.
And that's Miss Valerie there. She has this great optimistic outlook, saying that if you don't want to drive, give her a call. She'll pick you up. She'll deal with the gas prices. She's trying to make enough money as she can this holiday weekend. Jim, we spoke with the head of the petroleum analyst, and he says that we should expect these gas prices to remain high throughout the rest of the summer. Jim?
All right, Nadia Romero, not good news there. Thank you very much, though. We appreciate it. A quick break. We'll be back in a moment.
All new Inside Africa. Go inside the inventive minds, evolving places, and creative trends. of the Africa you need to know now. A film academy designed to help young African creatives thrive.
There's a kind of free flow and a spirit out there that I think is very, very exciting.
Inside Africa on CNN, in association with Zenith Bank.
Our mission here at CNN and journalists, the news comes first. That's when your heart beats a little bit faster. More breaking news that we are following right now. You really work as hard as you can getting the facts. We're learning more about an alleged plot. It is critically important. To our viewers in the United States and around the world, welcome to the Situation Room. We have breaking news.
We share this place, we all belong.
I'm Linda Kincaid in Atlanta, and this is CNN.
It's an iconic photo from former President Barack Obama's years in office, and now Obama is giving an update on Jacob Philadelphia, who was just 5 years old when his dad brought him to the White House in 2009.
Yeah, he's kind of standing there looking at me for a second, and then he says, "Is your hair like mine?" I go, "Well, you want to check and see?" Then I lean down and I said, "Go ahead, touch it." I said, what do you think? He says, "Yeah, that's good." I think that's pretty much what I got.
Now, 13 years later, Jacob is graduating from high school. That's right. Perfect time to catch up with the former president.
Hello.
Is that Jacob?
Yep, it is.
it's Barack Obama, man. Do you remember me?
Yeah, I remember you telling me that your hair was going to be gray next time.
And I was not lying.
It is gray. As for what's next for Jacob, he's heading to the University of Memphis to study political science. Good for him. Julia Child once said, with enough butter, everything is good, or anything is good. The legendary chef is the subject of this brand new CNN film, Julia. And as we get ready for the premiere, CNN's Ana Cabrera gives us a taste of the delicious life led by America's first food icon.
There would be no Emerald. No Barefoot Contessa.
That's pretty good.
No Iron Chef.
Iron Chef Bobby Flay.
Or Rachel Ray.
Yummo. Welcome to the French Chef.
If not for Julia Child.
Today we're cooking a goose.
The original television celebrity chef who brought elevated French cooking to the American masses. Julia was first introduced to cooking in France, where she lived with her husband Paul after World War II.
And as soon as I got into France and realized what it was all about, it came upon me that that was what I'd been looking for all my life. I decided that I would really like to do serious delving into cuisine, so I enrolled in the Cordon Bleu.
After the Cordon Bleu, Julia partnered with friends and fellow chefs to write the culinary tour de force, mastering the art of French cooking.
We're about to see a French omelet.
To promote the cookbook, Julia appeared on the Boston public TV station WGBH.
The only way you learn how to flip things is just to flip them.
Where she demonstrated how to apply French cooking techniques at home in an American kitchen. The appearance was such a success, the producers at WGBH offered Julia, already in her 50s, her own show. The French Chef, one of the first cooking shows to ever appear on American television, premiered on WGBH in 1963.
This is really the stew of stews, Bœuf Bourguignon.
Julia Child became a TV powerhouse, enchanting American audiences with her distinctive voice and approachable demeanor.
Julia Child presents the Chicken Sisters,
becoming a beloved cultural icon.
Please welcome Julia Child. Julia.
It's hard to overstate the impact Julia Child had on American cooking.
Her coming on television and telling America that they could make great food out of the supermarket virtually changed the landscape of food in America.
And it created a whole universe of charismatic chefs taking to TV and social media to teach people at home that everyone can cook.
This is Julia Child. Bon appetit.
Ana Cabrera, CNN.
Be sure to tune in. The all-new CNN film, Julia, airs Monday night at 8 right here on CNN, and we're back in a moment.
All new African Voices Changemakers. Create opportunities. Impact communities. Transform lives. Highlighting some of the biggest changemakers on the continent.
Hands up! This place right here is where talent is nurtured. We're trying to bring positive change into the community.
African Voices Changemakers, only on CNN, in association with Glow.